Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever scrolled through Instagram or TikTok at 7 a.m. holding a lukewarm cup of instant coffee while an influencer mom on screen gently feeds her toddler a $14 organic acai bowl in a completely silent, spotless beige kitchen and thought to yourself, am I failing at this? If you've ever felt the crushing weight of modern social media perfectionism where loving your kids somehow got wrapped up in buying handcrafted wooden toys, organic meal prep kits, and an aesthetic lifestyle that costs a month's rent, you are not alone. Today we are talking about Rachel's story, a deep dive into the hidden cost of social media comparison, why aesthetic parenting is breaking our bank accounts and our sanity, and how to finally stop feeling like you're not doing enough. Hit that subscribe button, grab whatever coffee you've reheated 3 times today, and let's dive in. The glow of Rachel's phone was the brightest thing in the room at 6:15 a.m. She swiped through a seamless reel of pastel-lit perfection. On screen, a woman in an ironed linen set poured fresh almond milk into a glass bottle, effortlessly assembling a triple-decker bento box filled with star-shaped dragon fruit and organic avocado. "Morning routine with my little angel," the caption read, complete with a soft acoustic soundtrack. Rachel glanced down. Her 4-year-old, Leo, was sitting on the faded rug in a mismatched pajama set, gleefully chewing on the rubber corner of a neon yellow plastic fire truck. On the coffee table rested Rachel's breakfast, a lukewarm mug of instant coffee and a half-eaten slice of store-brand white toast. A familiar heavy lump settled in her chest. She looked around the tiny living room. There was no serene beige backdrop here. A pile of laundry waited to be folded. A faint stain from yesterday's apple juice darkened the sofa cushion, and Leo's second-hand toys, loud, bright, and unmistakably plastic, were scattered like landmines across the floor. "Mama, look! Vroom!" Leo squeaked, holding up the truck. Rachel forced a smile, smoothing down his unbrushed curls. "Vroom, buddy," she murmured. She picked up her phone again, staring at the influencer's pristine kitchen island. The comment section was a sea of admiration. "So inspiring. What a lucky toddler." Rachel swiped out of the app and opened her banking portal. The available balance stared back at her, uncompromising and small. Organic dragon fruit wasn't in the budget this week. Neither was the $80 wooden sensory table she'd saved on Pinterest. Leo giggled, smashing the fire truck into her knee. Rachel pulled him into a hug, breathing in his warm syrup scent, but the quiet voice in her head refused to go silent. He deserves better than this. The fluorescent lighting of the green pantry felt less like a grocery store and more like an upscale art gallery. Rachel stood in the produce aisle, clutching a wire basket that already felt heavy with burden rather than food. Her eyes scanned the hand-lettered chalkboards above the displays. $8.99 for a cluster of organic heirloom avocados. $12 for a tiny tub of cold-pressed almond butter. $6 for a single pint of dark, perfect blueberries. Earlier that morning, Rachel had watched a 2-minute video titled, "Nourishing My Toddler, Clean Eating Lunch Prep." The influencer had arranged sliced avocado, hemp seeds, and steamed kale into a divided bamboo plate. It looked so clean, so effortless, so attentive. Standing in the store, Rachel felt a sudden urgent need to prove she could offer Leo the exact same standard of care. She dropped 2 avocados, a organic lemon, and a bunch of organic kale into her basket. By the time she reached the self-checkout, she had 5 items. The register chimed, $37.42. Rachel tapped her debit card with a sudden spike of anxiety, making a mental note to skip her own lunch or tweak the utility budget later that week.
It's for Leo, she reminded herself. It's an investment in his health. An hour later, her kitchen counter looked like a war zone. Blanched kale leaves were stuck to the cutting board, and lemon juice stung a tiny paper cut on her thumb. Rachel carefully arranged the sliced avocado, a sprinkling of hemp seeds, and tiny kale bites on Leo's plate. She took a photo just for herself to capture the effort and placed the plate in front of Leo. Leo peered at the green plate, wrinkled his small nose, and pushed it away. "No green," he announced firmly. "Want crackers." "Just try one bite, sweetie," Rachel urged, her voice tight. "It's yummy avocado." Leo picked up a slice, inspected the green skin, and promptly flung it onto the floor, where it landed face down on the rug. He then reached for the box of goldfish crackers sitting on the counter, pointing insistently. Rachel sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the squashed $4 half of an avocado on the carpet. The frustration wasn't really about the food, or even the money. It was the realization that no matter how much she tried to force her life to fit the aesthetic template, the reality remained stubbornly, messily chaotic. The driveway of the Henderson home was filled with sleek, late-model SUVs, making Rachel's 10-year-old hatchback look like a relic as she pulled up. She adjusted Leo's shirt, trying to smooth out a crease, before walking up the paved walkway to the towering front door. Claire, a mother Rachel had met through a local parent group, greeted them with a serene, immaculate smile. "Rachel, come on in. The kids are in the playroom." Stepping across the threshold felt like walking straight into a high-end design catalog. The open-concept living space was bathed in natural light, painted in soft tones of oat and cream. There were no plastic landmines here. In the playroom, Claire's daughter and two other toddlers were quietly sorting smooth, pastel-painted wooden blocks into natural wicker baskets. "We tried to stick to open-ended, low-stimulation materials," Claire explained softly, handing Rachel a ceramic mug of freshly brewed matcha. "No screens, no loud plastic toys with batteries. It keeps their nervous system so grounded." Leo immediately broke the quiet atmosphere by charging toward a handcrafted wooden rocking horse, squealing at the top of his lungs. Rachel's heart did a familiar, nervous flutter. "He's so energetic," another mom laughed, though her eyes drifted briefly to Leo's bright red graphic tee, a sharp contrast to the other children's matching linen sets. As the morning went on, Rachel sat on the pristine rug, holding her mug with both hands. She listened to the other mothers discuss organic co-ops, private preschool wait lists, and Montessori floor beds. Every time Leo tried to play, Rachel found herself tense, terrified he would scuff a wall, break a $60 wooden rainbow stacker, or drop a crumb on the light carpet. When Leo reached into his small backpack and pulled out his favorite toy, a battered, noisy plastic fire truck that flashed blue lights and blared a loud siren, the playroom fell momentarily quiet. "Oh, does that make noise?" Claire asked politely, her smile barely flinching. "We usually ask the kids to keep battery toys at home so they don't overstimulate the group." Rachel felt a hot rush of embarrassment burn up her neck. "Right, sorry," she muttered quickly, gently taking the truck from Leo's hands. Leo immediately burst into a high-pitched, frustrated scream, throwing himself onto his back on the spotless floor. As Rachel scrambled to calm her thrashing son, under the quiet, sympathetic stares of the other mothers, the walls of the Citadel felt less like a haven and more like a fortress built to keep people like her out. The image of Claire's serene playroom haunted Rachel for days. It solidified a dangerous resolution. She had to create the evidence, even if she couldn't afford the lifestyle. She needed to capture just one picture, One irrefutable piece of proof that she was that mom. The target was Becca, the definitive voice of effortless motherhood. Becca's feed was a masterpiece of minimalism. Soft linens, open-ended wooden toys, and a toddler who always appeared calm and compliant. Rachel stared at the newest photo. A quiet morning with our nature-inspired nook, small moments of intention. The voice in Rachel's head sharpened. It doesn't matter that it's staged. If I can take this picture, I can be good. She planned the shot for 3 days. She sacrificed 2 cups of coffee to buy a single, flawless, cream-colored wool throw blanket that she would definitely return the next day. She spent 2 hours scrubbing the kitchen island. She went to the park and collected 3 perfect pine cones and 2 matching smooth stones, which she placed in a tiny wooden bowl Leo had found at a thrift store. She even found a matching oat-colored shirt for him at an outlet center.
On Saturday morning, Rachel enacted Phase 1, the staging. She draped the blanket over the sofa, hiding the persistent juice stain. She placed the thrift store bowl with the pine cones on the corner. She wiped all the fingerprints from the glass table. Then, Phase 2, the subject. Okay, Leo, we're going to put on your nice soft shirt. Leo, however, had different plans. He wanted his faded dinosaur pajamas and his favorite breakfast, the fluorescent orange circle cereal that was definitely not nature-inspired. Rachel kept her voice even, a tight smile plastered on her face. No, honey, we wear this shirt today. And look, we have yummy banana slices for breakfast. She'd cut the bananas into stars using her leftover cookie cutter from the failed kale lunch. Leo took one look at the soft shirt and the banana stars and howled. Not just a whine, but a full-body, tectonic meltdown. He thrashed. He threw the banana stars across the pristine kitchen island. He clawed at the wool throw, causing a loop of yarn to pop loose. "Leo, stop!" Rachel snapped, her own anxiety spiking instantly. "Just put the shirt on. It's one picture." She looked around. The immaculate island was splattered with banana, the blanket was already snagged, and Leo was screaming, his face purple, completely unphotogenic, and definitively unhappy. She had spent $40 on props, 4 hours planning, and sacrificed her patience, all to create a momentary mirage. Rachel sat heavily on the floor, Leo's wails a stark contrast to the quiet acoustic guitar that undoubtedly played in Becca's house. She hadn't just failed to get the picture, she felt she had failed her son.
The final straw didn't arrive in a cloud of dramatic tragedy. It came in a thin white envelope stamped with a red past due warning. Rachel sat at the kitchen table on Thursday evening, her laptop screen illuminating a brutal spreadsheet. A routine checkup for their hatchback had revealed a worn-out alternator and a leaking water pump. The bill was $640, money that simply didn't exist. To cover it, she had quietly shifted funds away from the grocery budget and ignored the electric bill, hoping to catch up next month. She hadn't. In the living room, Julian was sitting on the rug with Leo. They were building a jagged, unstable tower out of mismatched cardboard boxes and plastic blocks. Leo's belly laughs echoed off the walls as the tower crashed down. It was a sweet, ordinary scene, but to Rachel it felt like an illusion hovering over an abyss. "Hey," Julian said softly, stepping into the kitchen as Leo began lining up his plastic trucks. "You've been staring at that screen for an hour. Come sit down." Rachel didn't look up. The electric bill came. "With the late fee, it's $210. We don't have it, Julian." Julian sighed, pulling out a chair beside her. "Okay, we'll figure it out. I can take an extra shift this weekend, or we can call him and ask for a payment plan. It's tight, but we're going to be fine." "We're not fine." Her voice cracked, loud and brittle in the quiet kitchen. Julian blinked, startled by the intensity. "Rachel, it's just a bill. We've been broke before."
"It's not just the bill." The dam burst. Tears, hot and heavy, spilled over her lashes. "It's everything. I can't even buy him decent food without checking our account 3 times. I took him to Claire's house and he looked like a charity case with his stupid plastic toys, while all the other kids played with $80 wooden sets. I tried to make a stupid fruit plate and he hated it, and I spent $40 on a blanket just to take a picture so people wouldn't think I'm a terrible mother." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with raw, ragged sobs. "I'm failing him, Julian. Everyone else is giving their kids this beautiful, organic, peaceful life, and I'm giving him cheap nuggets, hand-me-downs, and a mother who's constantly screaming because she's terrified of an electric bill." Julian was silent for a long moment. Then he gently pulled her hands away from her face and looked straight into her eyes. "Rachel," he said quietly, his voice firm and steady. "Look at him." Rachel turned her head toward the living room. Leo was sitting amidst the cardboard boxes, holding a plastic truck in each hand, completely absorbed in his own world, humming a happy, tuneless song. "He doesn't care about the blanket. He doesn't care about the wooden toys. He cares that you love him. But this online stuff, it's killing you." The silence in the apartment on Friday morning was almost deafening. The night before, after Julian went to bed, Rachel had stood in the dark kitchen and held her thumb over the social media icons on her phone. One by one, the little X's wriggled above the apps. With a deep, shuddering breath, she tapped them. Delete, delete, delete. Now, sitting at the table while Leo chewed on a piece of toasted store-brand bread, her thumb reflexively reached for the spot on the screen where the colorful camera icon usually lived. Her brain craved the quick hit of dopamine, the mindless scrolling through Becca's serene world, the endless benchmark setting. Finding only blank wallpaper, a phantom twitch ran through her hand. "Mama, look!" Leo called out, smearing peanut butter across his cheek. "I made a smiley face." Normally, Rachel's mind would instantly jump to 2 places. Is that organic peanut butter? And I should take a picture of this for my story. Without the apps, neither thought had anywhere to land. The first few days of the digital detox felt strangely like withdrawal. Rachel experienced a constant restless urge to document, to check, to compare. The quiet of her own life felt terrifyingly loud. Without the curated feeds of strangers telling her what parenting was supposed to look like, she was forced to look directly at her actual reality.
It was messy. The sofa still had the juice stain. The electric bill was still waiting to be paid through a negotiated installment plan. But as the weekend wore on, something subtle began to shift. On Sunday afternoon, instead of trying to stage an aesthetic activity, Rachel sat on the floor and simply watched Leo play. Without a camera lens between them, she noticed the tiny dimple on his knuckles that was starting to fade as he grew out of toddlerhood. She heard the sheer, unbridled delight in his laugh when his plastic fire truck crashed into a pile of pillows. For the first time in months, Rachel wasn't performing, she was just present.
The neighborhood park was loud, bright, and distinctly uncurated. On Tuesday afternoon, Rachel sat on a sun-warmed wooden bench, watching Leo race around the plastic jungle gym. A week ago, she would have kept her phone out, framing photos from low angles to block out the chipping paint or the overflow trash can near the swings. Today, her hands rested empty in her lap. A woman with a messy top knot sat down on the other end of the bench, letting out a long, dramatic exhale. She wore faded sweatpants with a bleach stain on the knee and held a lukewarm travel mug. "If I have to untie one more shoe today, I'm declaring bankruptcy," the woman muttered, nudging a stray gravel stone with her sneaker. "I hear that. My 4-year-old lost his left shoe in a grocery store parking lot yesterday. Just gone. Mine threw his right shoe out of a moving minivan window last month." She shook her head. "I'm Sarah, by the way, mother of 2 tiny wrecking balls." "Rachel." Sarah took a sip of her coffee and grimaced. "Cold again. Standard." She nodded toward Leo, who was currently attempting to climb up the slide backwards. "Is that your little guy?"
"Yeah, that's Leo," Rachel said, bracing herself for the usual parent polite talk. "He's full of energy." "He looks like he's having a blast," Sarah laughed. "Mine are currently eating dirt by the sandbox. Honestly, good for their immune systems. That's what I tell myself so I don't have to get up." Rachel let out a genuine, unprompted laugh, the first one in weeks. "I spent $20 on organic kale last week trying to be a good mom." He threw it face down on the carpet. Sarah put her hand over her heart, gasping dramatically. $20? Girl, my kids live on dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and spite. If it's green, they treat it like toxic waste." They sat on that bench for nearly an hour, trading war stories about public meltdowns, mountain-high laundry piles, and tight budgets. There were no references to Montessori philosophy, 0 discussions of beige wooden toys, and not a single mention of aesthetic color palettes. When it was time to leave, Sarah stood up, brushing wood chips off her knees. "Hey, we're at the park most Tuesdays around this time. Bring your kid, and I'll bring some burnt instant coffee." Walking back to the car, holding Leo's sticky hand, Rachel felt a lightness in her chest she hadn't realized was missing. She didn't need a picture-perfect community. She just needed a real one. The rain was coming down in steady gray sheets on Thursday afternoon as Rachel scrambled into the local strip mall coffee shop, holding a newspaper over Leo's head. The shop was crowded and loud. Rachel ordered 2 basic drip coffees and a blueberry muffin for Leo to split, sitting down at a small laminate table near the back exit. That was when she saw her. Sitting in the corner booth was Becca, the influencer whose pristine beige life Rachel had spent months trying to replicate. Except the woman sitting in the booth looked nothing like her polished grid. Becca's hair was thrown into an unwashed, greasy bun held together by a plastic claw clip. She was wearing an oversized gray hoodie smeared with what looked like dried toddler applesauce, and her eyes were rimmed with dark, swollen circles. Her 2-year-old daughter was screaming in a high-pitched, relentless screech, kicking the side of the wooden table while flinging bits of a soggy croissant onto the floor. "Harper, please stop!" Becca snapped, her voice tight, strained, and entirely devoid of the soothing melodic tone she used in her videos. She reached for her phone, which was propped up against a sugar shaker, trying to angle the lens away from the chaotic mess around her. "No! Want juice!" the toddler shrieked, swatting at the phone and knocking a full cup of iced latte directly into Becca's lap.
Becca gasped as the milky liquid soaked into her sweatpants. She didn't look angry. She just looked entirely broken. She sank back into the vinyl booth, buried her face in her hands, and began to softly cry, while her daughter continued to scream. Rachel sat frozen. The mirage didn't just crack, it shattered completely. Standing up, Rachel grabbed a handful of napkins from her own table, walked over, and quietly placed them on the mess. "Here," Rachel said softly. "Do you need a hand?"
Becca looked up, wiping a tear from her cheek, her face flushed with shame. "I'm so sorry," Becca whispered, her voice trembling. "She's been throwing tantrums all day, and I have to turn in a sponsored post by 4 o'clock, or we don't get paid." Rachel looked at the propped-up phone, the staged corner of the table, and the exhausted mother sitting in front of her. "Don't apologize," Rachel said gently, sitting down beside the spilled milk to help gather the dropped croissant pieces. "It's okay. It's just a messy day." For the first time, Rachel didn't see an icon of perfection. She just saw another tired mom trying to survive the afternoon.
Friday night arrived with the quiet comfort of a long-awaited exhale. Julian pulled a pile of old, mismatched sheets from the linen closet. Faded floral fitted sheets, a navy flat sheet with a torn corner, and a scratchy wool blanket from their college days. There was nothing beige or curated about the pile. "All right, Chief," Julian announced, dropping the armful onto the living room floor. "Operation Fortress is a go!" Leo let out a loud gasp, his eyes wide as saucers. "A fort?" For the next hour, the tiny living room transformed. They dragged heavy dining chairs into a semicircle, anchored sheet corners under couch cushions, and used heavy books to weigh down the edges. Rachel didn't care that the room looked like a cyclone had hit it, or that the sheets were a clash of primary colors and faded patterns. When the structure was finally complete, the three of them crawled inside. The air under the sheets was warm and cozy. Julian clicked on a cheap plastic flashlight, illuminating the inside with a golden, magical glow. Rachel brought in a baking sheet loaded with 3 bowls of store-brand macaroni and cheese and a sleeve of plain crackers. Leo sat cross-legged on the rug, his face smeared with yellow cheese sauce, grinning from ear to ear as he bounced up and down. "This is the best house ever, Mama," he whispered, as if sharing a top-secret classified operation. Rachel leaned her back against the sofa, wrapped her arm around Julian's shoulder, and pulled Leo into her lap. There was no soft acoustic soundtrack playing, no professional lighting, and certainly no camera focused on them. The floor was hard, the cheese was cheap, and the blanket fort was structural chaos. Yet, as Leo snuggled close, his warm belly rising and falling with contented breaths, Rachel felt a profound, settling peace. He didn't need organic acai bowls or an aesthetic Montessori playroom to feel loved. He just needed this: a dark room, a flashlight, a messy fort, and parents who were fully, beautifully present.
Rachel's story isn't just about deleting an app. It's about reclaiming your sanity in a world that profits off making parents feel inadequate. So if your living room is covered in plastic landmines right now, if dinner tonight was dinosaur nuggets, or if your budget doesn't leave room for organic acai bowls, take a deep breath. You are doing an amazing job. Your kids don't need a picture-perfect childhood. They just need you. If this episode resonated with you, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep creating content that tells the real side of parenting without the fake filters. You can find the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. I want to hear from you down in the comments. What's one aesthetic parenting trend you're officially giving up on? Let's start a real, unfiltered conversation down there. Check out this video on screen next for more real talk. Keep being present, and I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.